There are moments that arrive without warning. You don't see them, you don't hear them, but something inside you shifts. It's like a pause that lingers between heartbeats, a subtle stillness before the breath returns, a silence so complete, it feels alive. What is this sensation that can't be named? This strange awareness that emerges, not from thought, but from something much older. You don't know why, but you feel it. Something is watching, not from outside, but from within. And in this moment, you realize not everything that exists can be seen, not everything that matters can be possessed. Since childhood, we are taught to gather, to claim, to achieve. Own your path, own your future, own your success. But no one tells us that what can be possessed can also be lost. You spend years building an identity, only to realize it's built on shifting sand. You carry names, titles, possessions, but none of them answer the question, who are you? When nothing is left to hold, we have mistaken the temporary for the eternal, and in doing so, we forget that the most precious things are never owned, only experienced. How many names from your bloodline? Do you remember? Can you recall the voice of your great-grandmother, the dreams of your great-grandfather? They lived, they loved, they cried under the same sky you walk beneath now. But time sweeps everything away. You too will be a memory. And one day, not even that, not because you were unimportant, but because forgetting is the way the world continues forward. You will be replaced, not out of malice, but because that's the rhythm of life. In Hermetic philosophy, they say, as above, so below. What lives must die. What appears must vanish. What is remembered will be forgotten. And yet we resist. We build. We preserve. We protect illusions of permanence. But the only constant in this realm is transformation. The Kabbalists taught that this physical plane is but a shadow of the invisible world. But we cling to the shadow, forgetting the light behind it. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And perhaps that is the only true direction left to walk, not toward more, but toward depth, not to possess, but to be. You've spent your life chasing meaning in places the soul does not dwell, in numbers, in praise, in things that shine but do not illuminate. And still something aches, not loudly but persistently. A quiet hunger, not of the body but of the being. You fill rooms with furniture, but do you inhabit them? You decorate your life with achievements, but is anyone home inside breathing? You see, there's a difference between existing and being truly alive. And that difference cannot be found in what you have. It can only be felt in what you are. When everything else is gone, you are tired, but not from lack of sleep, not from the work, not from the noise. It is a deeper fatigue, the kind that settles in the bones of the soul. You've been carrying identities that were never yours to begin with, masks handed down like heirlooms, fitted onto your face before you knew your name. You carry the expectations of a world that praises performance and punishes presence. But who are you without all this? Strip away the roles, the names, the urgency. What remains? What is left? When you no longer have to prove your worth, look into a mirror. What do you see? A face, a body, a story written in skin. But who sees the mirror? Who stands behind the eyes? You change. The face ages. The thoughts shift. Yet something watches. Constant, silent, untouched. That something cannot be photographed, cannot be named, It is not what you think. It is what watches the thinking, and it's been there all along, waiting for you to notice. You look for meaning in words, in scriptures, in songs, in rituals, but the sacred lives, in the spaces between breaths, between thoughts, between moments you never noticed. The divine is not loud. It doesn't arrive with thunder. It doesn't demand attention. It whispers, and only those who have quieted the noise can hear. So much of life is missed, not because it's hidden, but because we're too distracted to feel. Stillness is not emptiness. It is presence, without effort. Your ego has a plan. It wants to be remembered, to leave a legacy, to build something that lasts forever. But forever does not belong to the ego. You can name a building after yourself. You can etch your name in stone, but even stone turns to dust. At best, you will be a footnote. At worst, forgotten entirely. The truth is harsh, but freeing. Nothing you build will survive time, but something deeper than legacy remains when something unspoken, unseen, undeniably real. What you gave in silence, what you loved without reason, what you were, when no one was watching, that is not forgotten, because it never belonged to the world in the first place. Your body is your first home, your sacred dwelling, your temple of perception. But even this will one day return to the earth. Then comes the house you built, filled with dreams, objects, echoes. Have you ever looked at it with awareness? The bed you sleep in may cradle someone else someday. The mirror that reflects you may forget your face. What you think you possess is only borrowed. You do not own the present. You merely pass through it. To see this clearly is not to despair, but to awaken. You've been taught that being busy means being alive, that your value is measured in motion, that stillness is weakness. But in chasing life, we forget to live. We run after time as if it owes us something, but time owes nothing. It gives and takes back, and in the end, all that matters is what you became. When the race stopped, the present moment has no ambition. It simply is, and in its simplicity, it holds everything. We imagine life as a straight line, beginning, middle, end, but the soul doesn't move like that. It spirals, it revisits, it deepens. What you thought you had overcome returns, but differently. You are not circling in vain. You are being refined. Each loop is a chance to see more clearly, to feel more honestly, to live more truly, but only if you stop, repeating without reflection. Otherwise, the spiral becomes a trap. Awareness turns it into ascension. Let's imagine, not as a cliché, but as a quiet truth. If today were the last, what would fall away? Would you still check your messages? Would you still hold grudges? Would your goals matter more or less? Would you speak softer, breathe slower, finally stop running? And what would rise in you? Once everything else faded, there's no need to answer. The question itself is enough. It reveals what's false and what's real, because when faced with the end, only what's essential remains, and that has no name, no proof, no performance. We surround ourselves with noise, not just sound, but distraction. We fill the hours. We scroll, we chase, we escape. But escape from what? From the quiet, from the stillness that asks too much. Because in the stillness, you meet yourself, not the version you crafted, but the one that simply is. It doesn't try to impress. It doesn't explain, it just exists. And for some, that is terrifying, because once all distractions fall away, you're left with the truth. You are enough, and that's both beautiful and deeply unfamiliar. Your identity is a costume, not false, but incomplete. You wear it to move through the world, to belong, to be understood, but you are more than the roles you play, and at some point, you'll grow tired of performing. You'll sense the weight of being, what others expect, and slowly the mask will crack, not violently, but like a dry leaf falling from a branch, and in that falling, you'll feel something you forgot. Freedom, not from the world, but from the illusion of needing to be someone. In order to matter, there is a light within you. That doesn't need fuel. It existed before your name, before your form. You didn't create it. You can't control it, but you can return to it. It doesn't shout. It doesn't shine for others to see. It glows quietly, like an ember beneath ash, and when everything else burns away, this light remains, not as a reward, not as a possession, but as your original essence, what you've always been, beneath the noise. Death is not the enemy. It is the revealer. It strips away the non-essential. It humbles the ego. It exposes truth, not to punish, but to clarify. We fear death because we cling to things, but nothing truly important can be taken. What you gave in love, what you offered in presence, what you were in silence, that doesn't die, because it never belonged to time. To walk with the awareness of death is not to be morbid. It is to be real, to cherish the impermanent, without trying to possess it, to love deeply, without needing to hold on. So what remains? When all is gone, not your titles, not your opinions, not even your story, what remains is your being, your inner stillness, your silent awareness. It is untouched by years, unaffected by failures, unimpressed by victories. It simply is. And in that isness, there is peace. Not peace as the opposite of chaos, but as the absence of division. You are not separate from truth. You are truth. When all the masks fall away, close your eyes, not to sleep, but to feel. There is a silence deeper than stillness. It doesn't begin when noise ends. It's always there, beneath everything else. It holds no opinions, no judgments, no past, no future, just now. And in that now, you are not lacking. You are not waiting. You are not lost. You are simply present. This is where all true answers live. Not in thought, but in the space between thoughts. In the breath you often forget you're taking. So much of life is spent, trying to be remembered, to leave a mark, to matter. But what if you don't need to be remembered, to have lived fully? What if the echo you leave is not in people's minds, but in the fabric of existence itself? In a kind gesture, in a moment of stillness, in the silent presence that held another, without needing to speak. That is not forgotten, because it was never dependent. On being seen, you have nothing to become, only something to remember. The truth was never far. It was simply buried beneath distractions. You don't need to add more to yourself. You only need to see what has always been there. You are not a project. You are a presence, and presence cannot be owned. It cannot be captured. It cannot be marketed. It cannot be taken. It just is. And in that, you are already free. The world will forget your name. That is not a threat. It's a mercy, because once all identities dissolve, what remains is what truly lives. The rest was a costume, a story told for a time, a dance across a brief stage. But now, step off that stage, not in defeat, but in awareness, because what cannot be possessed cannot be lost, and what cannot be lost is what you've always been. If something inside you stirred while listening, if a silence grew louder, don't rush to fill it. Sit with it, breathe with it, let it speak without words. Truth is not something you find, it's what remains. When the search ends, this is free mind, a space for those who feel. There is something beyond appearances, beyond urgency, beyond the noise. If this message resonated with you, consider staying with us, not out of habit, but out of resonance. Here, we don't promise answers. We offer silence, depth, and presence. Subscribe, share, reflect, and because what truly echoes is never loud.